From Riverbend Church in Austin, Texas, this is Real Life with Dr. Gerald Mann. Today on Real Life, what moms need most.
She said, that's really not what we need for you to draw this idealistic portrait. She said, I don't need damnation on Mother's Day. I need affirmation. And none of us can measure up. And I said, well, okay, next year you can help me prepare the sermon.
All this and more today on Real Life.
What moms need most on Mother's Day. I want to read from John, the 19th chapter. Standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother, her sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. Jesus saw his mother in the crowd and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her. He said to his mother, "He is now your son." And then he said to the disciple, "She is now your mother." From that moment, the disciple took her to live with him in his home. What moms need most on Mother's Day. Hello, I'm Gerald Mann, and this is Real Life, a program that hopes to introduce you to a God who picks up the broken, puts them back together, empowers them to begin again. I am not some righteous guru who has all the answers. I'm a fellow struggler who spent over 40 years in helping people relate biblical principles to real life. If you watch this program often, you know that for the past few weeks that we've been talking about the value of family, not family values, but the value of the family unit to a society. The government, the schools, the church cannot function without stable families. Values such as honesty and fidelity and trust in God are best learned at home. We should not expect the school or the government to do our job. They can reinforce what children learn at home, but they cannot replace the home. So, the best thing I can do is help you strengthen your family. A few weeks ago, we aired a program where I talked about what dads need most on Father's Day. I used the acronym FACE, F-A-C-E. F stands for forgiveness, A, acceptance, C, cheers, and E, encouragement. Today, I'm going to share the matching Mother's Day message and talk about what moms need most on Mother's Day. And let me add that this message is for everybody. We never finish transacting with our moms. Last week, a lady said to me, I forgave my mother last week for a long-standing grudge. I said, where does your mother live? She said, in heaven. She passed away 20 years ago. We never finish transacting with moms. So, stay tuned for what moms need most on Mother's Day, right here on Real Life. Up until a few years ago, every Mother's Day, I, like most chauvinistic, patriarchal pastors, drew this ideal portrait of motherhood from the Bible. That was up until a few years ago. And then I made the mistake of asking Lois, after one of those, what she thought. She said, nah. She said, that's really not what we need for you to draw this idealistic portrait. She said, I don't need damnation on Mother's Day. I need affirmation. And none of us can measure up. And I said, well, okay, next year you can help me prepare the sermon. And I've done my own private survey, and everybody agrees with Lois. What moms need most on Mother's Day is an acronym which I call HUGS, H-U-G-S. H stands for hope. Moms need hope. And by that I mean they need to know that their investment in us was not in vain. Moms need to see some tangible evidence that their investment in us was not in vain. There's a modern myth that goes around that says that moms can be moms without ever having to actualize themselves through other selves, without ever having to sacrifice. Well, that's a myth. Everybody in this room, everybody watching on television who is reasonably sane and reasonably productive, had somebody who mothered them. May have not been your biological mother, but somebody decided to put their life on hold so that you might have life. Everybody is here because somebody sacrificed. And what moms need most is some tangible evidence of that. In this brief passage that we read in John 19, where Jesus is at the cross, he takes time to give his mom a tangible demonstration that her investment in him was not in vain. That's when he saw young John and he said, from now on, Mom, this is your son. And from now on, John, this is your mom. It was something tangible that she could get hold of. And that's what moms need on Mother's Day. I was reading a Louis L'Amour novel the other day, and it was about stagecoach fairs in the early West. That wasn't the theme, but they were talking about that. And there were three kinds of fairs. If you went first class, whenever something happened to the stagecoach, if it broke down or couldn't go up a hill or got stuck in the mud, you remained seated in the carriage. Now, second class, if it broke down or had an emergency, you could get out and wait until the problem was solved. There's a point to this, so just stay with me, okay? If you rode third class in the stagecoach, when something happened, you had to be part of the solution. You had to get out and push, or you had to fix the wheel. And I got to thinking, that's sort of the three postures of life. There are a lot of folks, when trouble starts, they just sit there and add to the weight. And some of them are second-class travelers. They get off of the wagon, but they just wait for somebody else to solve all the troubles. Be a third-class traveler. That's the point. That's one of the ways I know to give my mom hope, is to become part of the solution and not part of the problem. To roll up my sleeves when there's a problem and dive in and to help fix it. And I think that's what it means to give your mom hope. Let her see that you have decided to live your life as part of the solution, not part of the problem, okay? So moms need hope on Mother's Day. You, H-U, U stands for understanding. And by understanding, I don't mean sympathy. Sympathy means to feel for. And there are some moms who can put a big guilt trip on us by telling us how much they did for us, and we ought to feel sorry for it. Moms don't need sympathy, they need empathy. They need for you to get inside their skin and to think what they were thinking. And you can do that whether your mother is here today or whether she's alive or whether she's gone to heaven. Doesn't matter. Moms need empathy. Gail Sheehy, the great writer, says the number one complaint of women in America is that people are unable to feel with me. Feel what I feel. You go back to that picture at the cross, and I think when Jesus, in all of his agony, when he had many other things on his mind, chose that last moment when he just had a few breaths left to care for his mother, I think he was saying to her, I now understand the pain that you have had all of these years. Only she and Jesus knew that the beginning would end like it did. He was born to die. And when she looked at him in his cradle, she understood that someday she would be looking up at a cross. And I think that last moment was his way of saying, Mom, and we make a joke of this now, but it's true, I feel your pain. I understand. I read a story the other day about a remarkable man. He's become he's very famous. He's wealthy. He's been successful. He's given to many philanthropies. He was severely burned when he was 10 years old. And he said there was really nothing they could do for him. They told him his mother that he was going to die. She stayed with him every moment, bathing the burns, and it was before they had the antibiotics that they have now. And he said he could see on her face that he was not going to make it. And as he got sicker and sicker, and they had given up all hope, one day she decided to bring his tutor to the hospital room to help him with his irregular verbs and dangling participles. And for some reason, that triggered a reversal, and he got well. And he said, the reason I got well was I thought I was dying, and they were all lying to me, and I got to thinking, if Mom's got somebody up here helping me with irregular verbs and dangling participles, evidently I'm going to get well. And he did. He said years later his mother told him it was an act of utter desperation, that she went to pray and pour her heart out to God, and you've looked at your sick children. And as she wept and poured her heart out to God, she said, all that I had in my mind was irregular verbs, dangling participles. To feel what your mother felt. That's what moms need most on Mother's Day, is understanding. Hugs, hope, understanding. G stands for gratitude. And I don't mean this kind of guilty obligation. I thought for a long time to be grateful meant to feel bad really about what everybody had done for me and that I owed them and I could never pay them back. But I'm not talking about obligation. I'm talking about reincarnation. Stay awake, please. What moms need most on Mother's Day is to see the goodness and the discipline and the integrity that they get. They need to see it reincarnated. They need for you to be grateful is not to feel guilty or obligated. It's to pass on what's been given to you. And that's what Jesus was doing that day at the cross. I think he was saying to his mom, Mom, you've done a good job, and I'm grateful because I'm passing on, I'm reincarnating in my sacrifice, the sacrifice that you gave to me. And that's what moms need on Mother's Day, not just a simple thank you. They need to see that you're reincarnating the good stuff that they passed on to you. I heard a story the other day about a time management expert who was asked to come and do a seminar at the Harvard MBA school, greatest business school in the world. Had his class there with all of these bright and beautiful kids. And he walked in, reached under the desk, and pulled out a gallon-sized mason fruit jar, wide-mouth fruit jar. Reached under there and got 6 fist-sized rocks. Filled the jar up with the big rocks. Then he said to the MBA students, is the jar now full? They said, yes. He said, wrong. Reached under and pulled out a bucket of gravel. Poured it into the jar. He said, is the jar now full? Well, they had begun to catch on, bright students that they were. They said, probably not. He said, good. Poured some sand in. Filled it up. He said, is it now full? They said, no. And he said, good for you. Pulled out a pitcher of water and filled it all the way up to the top. He said, now, can any of you bright young people tell me what's the moral of this demonstration? One popped up and said, this is time management, right? The moral is, no matter how full your schedule gets, you can always crowd in something more. He said, duh. The moral of the story is, if you don't put in the big rocks first, there'll never be room for them later. You need to find what the big rocks are. Faith, family, love, friends, caring, integrity, discipline. Those are the big rocks. And if you don't put them in first, there'll be no room for them later. I think that's what it means to express gratitude to our moms on Mother's Day. To resolve to put the big rocks in first. And that was what Jesus did with his life, and that was his way of thanking his mother. She did that. She put in the big rocks first, and he did the same thing. Hope, understanding, gratitude. That's what moms need most on Mother's Day. What's the S? I added the S. The S stands, I had to come up with an S word, okay? A sitter. That's what moms need most on Mother's Day. And what do I mean by that? They need relief. They need to be released. They need to be told at some time in life, Mom, you're no longer responsible for the way I turn out. I am now responsible for myself. And that's what Jesus was doing at the cross. He was saying to his mom, Mom, you now go and be John's mom. Your days with me are over. You have done what you're supposed to do. He set her free. 3 summers ago, I started writing a book. In fact, it's the only book I've ever written that hasn't been published. I haven't published it yet. The religious publishers say it's too secular. Secular publishers say it's too religious. They said, you're neither fish nor fowl. You're kind of strange. I said, that's what people have been telling me for 40 years. But somebody said, Gerald, you ought to write your stories down. Well, I started writing my stories, and I realized that my stories were all autobiographical. And so I started writing my family story. And I wrote about my ancestors and how they came to this country, and I wrote about my father and my grandparents. Well, I was in an inheritance battle with one of my siblings at the time. My mother had passed away while I was in Africa, and I couldn't get home for the funeral. Got home and found out there was a will leaving everything to one sibling, which just added to my pain. And we were in the midst of that when I was trying to write this book. And every time I started to write a story about my mother, I had absolute writer's block. I couldn't get through it. I went to a friend of mine, a counselor, He said, obviously you have unfinished business with your mother, and you've been denying it all of your life. He said, pick the one thing that irritates you the most about your mother and go from there. And when I thought about that, the thing that irritated me the most was that my mother could not keep a secret. A couple of times when I was very young, my mom coaxed me into telling her what was troubling me. And within days, when I told her my secret, it came back as taunts from my brother and my father. And so I realized that I had never finished my business with my mother. I'm going to take a chance and read you what I wrote, which has not been published and probably won't be. This is from a 58-year-old man. It sounds like it's more like 5 to 8 years old. It has taken me a long time for me to accept the fact that my mother could not relate to men in her family on a trusting basis. I no longer resent this. She couldn't have done otherwise. She lived in a world where she had to manipulate in order to survive. Every secret shared became a weapon stockpiled for future advantage. She and my sister, predictably, were allies. Dad and my older brother were pals. I felt that I was neither one. The word bonding has haunted me all of my life. It never happened for me with either of my parents. I've been dodging this confession up to this very moment, but confessing it gives me a kind of freedom. I can now let it go and celebrate my parents' remarkable gifts. In Mom's case, she was an accomplished artist, a fine, fierce huntress, a fun-loving spirit, someone who enjoyed and knew how to handle good things. And I cannot forget the spring of her 78th year. I was standing in the Jordan River by the Sea of Galilee baptizing dozens of people. I looked up and there she was. After the tears, I said to her, "You gave me life and cared for me when I was helpless. You didn't have to do that. I know now that it was only because of Him who gives us life that is symbolized by this water." These may not be monumental words for you, but they are certainly monumental for me. For in that moment, I realized that none of us receives the perfect love we crave from our parents. Whatever we receive comes to us from broken vessels, and it is poured into broken vessels. The miracle is that love gets passed on at all. When all of our accounts are settled, I believe we will be measured by the amount of garbage we received but refused to pass on. When I think of that standard, I think of my father. But we will also be measured by the amount of love we are able to carry in our leaking buckets. When I think of this standard, I think of my mother. I don't know if I'm the only one here that has these struggles, but I would guess that I'm not. What do moms need most on Mother's Day? They need hope. They need understanding. They need gratitude. And they need release. They need to be relieved of the responsibility. And we need to take responsibility for ourselves. In preaching, they say there is a problem sometimes when you get up a tree and you can't get down. I'm way out on the limb. Let's pray together. Father, we say thanks for those who mothered us, for those that have gone before us and those that are here. Give us the grace to reach out and embrace and give our mothers hugs today, as you have given us hugs through them. In Christ's name, amen. This is my wife and friend and lover and companion, Lois Mann. I met you when you were 13 years old. Frankly, it was not love at first sight for either of us. But you were 13 and I was 15 when we had our first date. We married when you were 18 and I was 20. And 11 months later, we had a child, and you've been mothering all of your life and are raising a grandchild right now who is just entering the teenage years. You helped me write the sermon, Hugs. What moms need most on Mother's Day is hope, understanding, gratitude, and a sitter, some time off. For you, How is the best way for one of your children to give you hope?
Depending on their age, I would say for an adult or almost adult child would be to live a good life, a moral life, and take the things I hope that I taught them and become a better person.
Yeah. To take what they've been given, expand on it, and send it on. Understanding. Women are not understood, and many moms are not understood. When you need understanding, what does that mean?
Maybe somebody to listen to me, understand how I feel, and I think that's important for children also.
By understanding, when you helped me put this sermon together, I think you were talking about empathy. You don't want your children to feel obligated or anything like that.
No.
You want them to feel what you're feeling?
No, not particularly feel what I'm feeling, just understand. I need to be reassured sometimes also, just like they do. If I've worked real hard doing something for them, I need for them to say, thank you, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so hope for you is to carry on what they've been given and to enlarge on it and to let your gifts live through them. Understanding means to understand that you're not perfect. You're a sinner too. That's good. Gratitude. You want your children to feel obligated toward you?
No.
So the gratitude is not obligation.
No. Gratitude is to use also the gifts. By them using the gifts and growing up to be a good, responsible Christian person is a great gift to a mother.
Yeah, the word gratitude comes from the word grace. So gratitude is not feeling obligated. That's not what parents want. They want for the graces they've been given to be given on and multiplied, to pass it on.
And to call sometimes and say, I was just thinking about you. It's kind of nice for every once in a while. You pick up the phone and the child says, or doesn't say, I've got a problem.
Yeah. And that takes us to the S, H-U-G-S, sitter, time off. I think one of the distinctive things about our long friendship, romance together has been that you have never been reluctant to take time off from the kids. Every day we talked. Once a month we've tried to always go away for at least a night by ourselves. And we've taken extended trips. We've tried to be creative that way. There are many moms sitting out there that are so attached to their children they feel like it's wrong to leave them to spend time with the husband. What would you say to them?
I think that that's the best thing a mother can do for their children.
Is
to get away with the father.
Yeah.
They are better mothers, and the children are better children when they have some time to themselves. And mothers also need to be regenerated because so much of their whole life is giving. And if they don't take some time away to be regenerated, then they don't have anything to give.
We've been friends, thank God. I hope we're still friends after this. How do you keep your friendship alive under those kinds of stresses?
Well, you have to work at it. You have to create time because there's not enough time. And we did things together, even with your work. We did it together so that we could have some time together.
As a mother, it was very rewarding to hear that as a son, he had some feelings that he's still working through with his mom, because any relationship with your children is a complicated one. And it's good to hear that God's love undergirds all of that.
It made me reaffirm once again what a friend we have in Jesus. Beautiful music, the way he talked about motherhood, the religious experience of being a mother, being a son to a mother. It just reaffirms once again the amazing grace we have for thee.
For all of us here at Real Life and Riverbend Church in Austin, Texas, this is Gerald Mann inviting you to join us next time. Thanks for watching, and God's best to you.